sponsored by Riza Hygiene, we aim to highlight how the concept of cleaning and hygiene has changed in the past few months due to the ongoing pandemic, the experiences of facility owners in disinfecting commercial and residential buildings, and a lot more. Joining us today in our panel discussion is Mr. John Paul, the regional head of Dubai South DR, Mr. Tommy Taylor, director of T Taylor Solutions UK, and Mr. Riyaz Sanadi, division manager, Duraclean division, Initial Saudi Arabia Group. Just a few details before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box on your panel and I'll bring them up during the webinar. We'll also have a quick Q&A session with our experts in the end. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to our expert panel. Thank you for joining us today, John, Tommy, and Riaz.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My first question is for you, Mr. John. We'll start with a question that is on everybody's mind. How has the concept of cleaning and hygiene changed in the past few months due to the ongoing pandemic?
Thank you. Hello. Thank you, Samia. Good afternoon, everyone. This is John Paul. Thank you for this opportunity. Now, addressing this question, what we have seen is a big shift in the way that we have approached cleaning in the past month due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Earlier, when we considered what as back of house areas such as staircases, doorknobs, door handles, etc., is being sanitized and cleaned more regularly than common areas due to this issue. Because now that we have a concept of social distancing and deep cleaning required to address this issue, we have scheduled our cleaning and changed our methodologies to suit the requirements as per the requirements of the present conditions. I believe that all over the world, all cleaning companies are doing exactly the same. They are introducing more cleaning and sanitization protocols into their cleaning strategy rather than deep, normal cleaning. We have seen that a lot of front of house areas such as gyms, parks, gardens, etc., has been closed to maintain the social distancing and to stop the spread of the virus. So, in the meantime, we are concentrating more on sanitization and deep cleaning rather than normal cleaning procedures that were followed earlier.
Tommy, could you share your insights on this?
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon, fellow panelists, and good afternoon, everybody who's joining us. I'm trying to give it to you from a UK perspective, to be perfectly frank. There's not really been a lot of activity here just due to the lockdown since the end of March. Most of the activity that took place was before that period, where people were still using offices, still using shops and gyms, etc., etc. So at that time, there was a lot of disinfecting going on. There was an increased vigilance in terms of touch points, wiping down touch points, and just generally increasing the cleaning that surrounds touch points, etc. Now that we're in lockdown, the situation is that a lot of companies and organizations are now planning for when we reopen. Their focus has now changed from, and quite rightly, is now changed from what's going to happen on a regular clean, but to how and if we're able to control the spread of a virus or another virus that may come along in the future in a different way. I know that there's organizations out there are preparing to do atomizing or what people call misting, fogging, and all this will probably take place maybe in the first 1 to 2 weeks once the government lift any restrictions. So to be perfectly frank, what we're doing at the moment is not a lot different to what you guys are doing over there. this particular period in time.
Mr. Riaz, could you share your insights on this? The concept of cleaning and hygiene, how it has changed in the past few months due to the ongoing pandemic. Mr. Riaz, are you with us? Okay, moving on to the next question. John, this question is again for you. Cleaning and disinfecting a quarantine building is a whole different ball game altogether. What have been your experiences in this regard?
Yes, hi, Samia. With regards to a quarantine building, now in the UAE, we are at the second stage of fighting this pandemic. You can see we have already completed the initial 3 months, 3 weeks, lockdown, and now we are reopening up the buildings, and businesses are starting at a smaller scales, let's say like with 30% occupancy, etc. Now, during this time, whenever a case is reported in a building, Dubai municipality itself laid down certain criteria to disinfect the entire building. Rather than using the normal cleaning services and the companies that were doing the normal cleaning, which would have caused these unexperienced cleaners to be exposed to more danger of the virus and spreading it further, they delegated certain approved companies with specialized equipment to do the same. Now, three-phase stage cleaning procedure is followed as per the norms. This involves wiping the critical areas such as the reception, door knobs, the floors which the maximum infestation, etc. Then spraying the corners and the inaccessible areas where we might have missed it while doing the wiping, and then the fumigation process for the entire building, including corridors, garbage rooms, stairs, back of lifts, and the apartments where the suspected cases were residing. This is the three-stage process that has been followed right now. And apart from this, special onus is placed on the PPEs and protection to be done for the areas while this process happens. We use trained cleaners with proper full cover PPEs, including masks and gloves and shoe covers, etc. And there is also a separate procedure for the disposal of the same, so that in case infection is spreads to one of the staff who's doing it, he has on his coverall, this has to be disposed separately. Further, once a building is disinfected, we are advising all the residents to remain indoors for a minimum period of 5 hours, so that the chemical and disinfectant we are using can take effect and effectively remove the virus from all common areas before they access it. This is a normal procedure that we are following right now. Initially, in the initial stages, when people were panicking and they were just doing disinfection based on the methodologies that they were aware of, this had caused a lot of problems with staff were getting affected and infected because they were not following proper PPEs. But presently, we have a structured system in place, and it is very effective in controlling the spread, I can see.
Mr. Riaz, do you have any insights to share on this? What have been your experiences in this regard?
Currently, the lockdowns are going to be easy now, and the thing is, we are called most of the areas from the clients. We are called for the positive cases, where we need to clean, sanitize, and disinfect, and especially the facilities that we are sanitizing currently now are especially the schools, the healthcare facilities, and the important is the most called facilities is the accommodations for the people. We are currently working on this now, and in regard with this quarantine buildings, most of them are the accommodations where the people are accommodated. Most of the people are accommodated, and when we are trying to facilitate this, we mostly we are focusing on the host of the diseases, such as hotspots and the doorknobs and the faucets and everything that is being used, that is being touched by the hand point of the disease transmission, aside from the direct droplets that could be absorbed in the face-to-face interaction. So this is how we are working right now. Currently, we are working on this specially, but still we are not full in operations. Hopefully, within the next coming days, 15 to 20 days, we will be, inshallah, covering most of the areas. This is what I think.
Thank you for sharing your experiences. We have some questions from the guests. Paulo from Italy asks, do you foresee a major use of disposable mops and cloths for floor and surface disinfection operations? He means versus traditional mopping and wiping systems. This is a clear tendency here in Europe. Tommy, would you like to take up this question, please?
Yeah. Since actually before when we had what we called an isolation clean or an infectious clean, it has always been the habit to use disposable materials where possible. Clearly, because of COVID, this has been exaggerated even more. We're looking at different ways, different things that we can use, but where possible, disposable items should be used anyway, just purely because of the activity, purely because of the dangers it's presented to the operatives if items are not cleaned properly. If there's no washing machine on site and you can't wash clothes to a high temperature, then there's no point. So where possible, and definitely in your risk assessments, your method statements, etc., you should identify the use of all disposable materials like mops and cloths as a must. There's clearly things that we can't dispose of, the hardware, but for cloths and mops, they should be disposable every single instance in this particular case.
Hello. If I may add to this, since we in the progressed to the second stage, what we are following is that once the disinfection of a building is completed, we dispose of the coveralls and the PPE that were used by the staff who were doing it. Secondly, the staff are immediately told to take a shower and clean themselves off. And thirdly, the equipment which we use are wiped down with sanitizing chemicals to keep them safe from disinfecting from the surfaces where they came in contact with. This is something that we are following, and it has been proved to be really effective in controlling this.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you, John Paul, on that one.
The next question from the audience is also for you, John. You spoke about the fumigation method. So Michael Rollins asks, what is the fumigation method? Hydrogen peroxide or others? What is the concentration?
The concentrates, there are a lot of chemicals available in the market, which is good. We can utilize it depending on the type of fumigation equipment that you have. What we are following is a locally available disinfectant and sanitizing chemical, which is approved by the government as well as have been used in the Dubai public areas as disinfection also. It's a mild concentration of hydrogen peroxide, and it is proven to be really effective in all the areas that have been utilized. It is endorsed by the government also, and the MSTS and the safety data sheets for the same are available. However, saying this, there are other specialized chemicals also available in the market, which with effects lasting up to a month, But we have come across certain products from Australia and Singapore, which which lasts for almost a month, even after utilizing it over a surface, and it's really effective. But considering the cost implications of doing it over an entire building, which is like 18, 20 floors on an average, we are going with the simple methodology, which is easier to use and less complicated. And presently, there is a shortage of chemical available in the market if you go for the imports because of the present condition of lockdown across countries. So we are using with a local product. Mild concentration of sodium peroxide, like the gentleman mentioned, is really effective in controlling the situation.
To add on this, Amna, actually, we are using 3 or 4 types of chemicals, but the more effective, I think, is the most concentration, which is high. We are using one called vital oxide, where the concentration, most of the concentration of hydrogen peroxide is included in that, and one is Steri 7, which also we are using. That is also an effective one, which we are using currently.
All right, thank you for sharing your insights. We have requests from the guests. They want to see the video as well. So I would request all panelists to turn on their video. Thank you so much. Mr. Vikas, my next question is for you. How have you been working to prevent contamination of coronavirus on the facilities you maintain?
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Riaz, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes, of course, I can tell you some of the tips what we are preventing for cross contamination, and the facilities what we are maintaining right now. We are implementing a personal hygiene program for the clients uh, to remind all their staff and employees to wash their hands, and whatever equipments they are using has to be proper contaminated, and they have to use the separate equipments, and the work surfaces, probably the work surfaces has to be clean and sanitized on a daily basis or a frequent intervals, and the most important thing is we are constantly awareing and educating the occupants where we are doing the residential services, and we are also implementing the process of checking the symptoms before they are allowed to enter the facility. Whenever they are entering the facility, we are implementing the process of checking the symptoms by temperature check and other things, and continuous disinfecting and discontamination of the areas will be one thing which will possible host the infection. This is the thing where we are what we are currently doing.
John, would you like to add to that?
With regards to controlling the cross contamination and prevention, what we have developed is 2 methodologies. One is for commercial buildings, and the other one is for residential buildings and mixed developments. Now, in commercial buildings, now as per the new government directive here, since we are opening up with 30% strength in all offices now, what we are doing is that, like Mr. Riyad said, initially all staff and any members, any guests coming to the building is checked with by the security with a temperature gun, because having a high temperature is one of the most common symptom. And then secondly, we insist on all guests and staff to carry their own PPEs, example, face masks, gloves, while when they're coming to the building. We maintain social distancing even in elevators. We have marked down points so that people are further from each other. We ensure that minimum number of people only use elevators. There's no overcrowding in the lift lobby. Even when you are waiting in the reception, minimum distances are maintained. Now, going to a building, an office, we have communicated to all the offices in our buildings that they need to have people come in only on pre-approved appointments and timings, such that there is never more than 30% occupancy for any office. Even inside an office, they need to have at least weekly one disinfection for their offices by a specialized company to maintain the issue. We also informed them that if there is any case of people falling sick, whether it might be due to corona or for any other diseases, we are encouraging them to let them work from home so that we can keep everyone safe in this time. Secondly, this is for a commercial building. Now, coming to a residential building, we are informing all the tenants that any delivery, any guest, or any events in the apartments is supposed to be uh, as per supervised by the site team. For example, a delivery coming to the building, it need to be first sanitized in the reception before it can enter the building. Delivery has to be previously informed to the security and the receptionist that such an before the schedule. Then guest for apartments more than the stipulated number is not presently allowed. We have stopped gatherings, etc. in the building. We have told tenants not to, after like around 10:30 in the night, not to use the common areas, which will be disinfected daily. Then we have closed down swimming pools and gym areas in almost all our residential buildings, and because it is it's a common area for the spread of virus, and it has been disinfected and kept ready as and when we are sure that there is no possibility of spreading. These are some of the measures we are presently implementing across the buildings to keep things safe for our valued tenants.
We have another question from Raghu Kali. He says, I'm not sure how a surface can stay disinfected for 30 days unless the place is locked down. Would anybody like to take up this question?
I might have to agree with them on that one, to be perfectly frank. I think I don't think, I know. I mean, our job is to make sure that the building is safe, make sure that surfaces are safe, and make sure that users are safe within the building. So I would err on the side of caution of thinking that something will disinfect the surface for 1 week, 2 weeks, etc., etc. That's really not the solution to the particular problem that we've got at the moment and going forward. So I would err on the side of caution with claims of that nature. I will continue where appropriate to clean on a regular basis. But the one thing I must say that we're doing at the moment, which I think we should probably look at cutting back, is actually disinfecting too much, because disinfecting on its own is not always a solution. A good cleaning regime is a solution. Two-stage cleaning, neutral detergent first of all, then followed up by disinfection, is always the way, because as we know, we don't actually have any chemicals at the moment that can kill the COVID-19. So if we sort of, fall into that trap of thinking, well, we've got something that is going to be that powerful to sit on the surface for 1, 2 weeks, even longer, especially on touch points, then I think that we're fooling ourselves.
Thank you, Thomas. There is another question from Mr. Sunil Kanal. He says, how do you see the impact of disinfectants? Can it be monitored with some device to see if the impact starts reducing?
Hello. There are devices available in the market by which we can monitor the bacterial count on surfaces. This will give us a good understanding whether it's a contaminated surface or not. But I don't believe there is any equipment available right now in the market which can identify whether a surface is having a COVID virus on it or not. Uh, and this stage, all we can do is that we can keep the areas and the critical touch point areas especially clean using the normal disinfectants which is available. And hopefully this should be able to, we'll be able to control the spread with that.
To add on this, I mean, actually, we are some of the clients are asking for us for the reports once we finish the cleaning upon completion, and what we are sending that the bacteria to the swab to the labs so that we can provide them the reports. This is the only way. What, and there is no other alternate solution for this question.
All right, thank you. The next question is for you, John, from Muhammad Hazar. He asked, what is the best agent for the fumigation that we were talking about?
Sorry, what is the?
Best
Can you
agent
repeat the
for
question?
fumigation.
Hello.
What is the best agent for the fumigation?
What we're utilizing here for us is a product made by a brand called Chemex. It's called the surface disinfectant. It was recently developed by Chemex, which is a UAE local company. It is based on normal hydrogen peroxide concentration as well as other chemicals that they are suggesting. What the reason that we went with the local supplier is that when the lockdown happened, there was clear shortage of disinfection chemical in the market. So unless somebody has already stockpiled it, it was very difficult to use it on a large scale. But partnering with local companies has helped us to keep the supply strong so that it doesn't affect the process in the long run. I believe there are many other products available in the market from various brands. Mrs. Sanar, I believe you're also supplying certain products. And there are also international brands like Judux and all, which is also very efficient. Um, but I would recommend that you go with a local product which is readily available and something that is which has its own data sheets and MSDS which is approved by your local authority.
All right, thank you so much. The next question is again from Mr. Raghu Kali. He says, how do you measure the effectiveness of disinfection on a surface?
Like I said, there are certain equipment which measures the bacterial count on surfaces. The equipment is available in the market. Once you do a wipe down of a surface, you can use it to measure the count present and before wiping down to see the effect on the chemical. Uh, but like I said, and again, and I'm emphasizing, there is no equipment that I know of which measures, which can identify a COVID-19 virus on any surface.
Okay, my next question is for you, Tommy. When it comes to training, what are the key factors to be considered at such a time?
Um, well, the first key factor, and it's one close to my heart, is training. If you don't train the staff, it doesn't matter what you give them. You can give them the best disinfectant in the world. If they're not trained properly, if they're not given the tools to do the correct job, then there's always going to be a problem. And my role is really about people management. It's about getting people to be effective in what they do, and then and only then, once you give them the right equipment to be able to do it, then you've got a starting point. But if they're not trained properly, if they don't understand what they're using, if they don't understand the procedures in terms of what they should be doing, then no, it doesn't matter what equipment, what chemicals you got. You can have the best chemicals in the world. It will not work if the people are not trained and they're not actually focused on what they're doing.
All right, we have another question from Mr. Prem Kumar. He asked, how do you ensure that an area is clean and disinfected? Would anybody like to take this question on?
I think that John Paul has already answered it, and I could just reiterate what he said. Really, what you should do is, if you've got an effective cleaning regime in place, what you could do is you could pre-test the area and you can post-test the area using different swabbing methods. But as been said already, there is nothing that will identify COVID-19. So, as I said, the best method is a proper procedure, proper staff to do it. But the swabbing itself would only give you a limited view of what's on the surface, and I say it won't actually detect COVID-19. So swabbing is useful, but it's not the be all and end all. To be perfectly frank.
We have another question from Mr. Paulo from Italy. He asked, do you think that the traditional subdivision of areas as low, medium, high risk will be quite obsolete? Right now, any surface can be potentially considered infectable and infected, even the ones that we are considering low risk.
I believe that classifying areas based on high, low, and medium is still very effective in controlling this. Let me give you an example. Door knobs, door handles, common areas where we have deliveries happening, people from different areas coming in and going out. It's more a high risk area rather than, let's say, a back of house corridor or emergency staircase in this present condition. So concentrating on high-risk areas and disinfecting them on regular basis by the methodologies that we have already discussed helps us to control the spread of the disinfection at this present time. What I mean to say is that we should concentrate on these areas more than we should concentrate on the less utilized areas in the present condition. I can give an example. Now, since the start of this issue, we have closed down all the gyms and the swimming pools in most of the residential complexes as per government directive. Now, we are effectively utilizing the lifeguards and the cleaners of these locations by training them uh, rigorously on disinfection and letting them to do the common areas and the front of house areas like reception, doorknobs, lifts, inside of lifts, buttons, uh, garbage room handles, etc., etc.
Thank you. Next question is for Tommy. Tommy, what about health and safety in handling chemicals and in preventing contamination?
Um, I think, well, I mean, again, I go back. I sound like a broken record. I'm sorry for repeating myself. I think that the training in handling of chemicals and the actual type of chemicals is important. Where possible, use a chemical that doesn't need to be diluted. That would always save you time, and it will also give you a little bit of it also give you a little bit of safety in terms of health and safety and making sure you've got a correct dilution rate. Where you can get pre-measured chemicals, capsules, soluble pods, etc., they can be used. So there are various methods that can be done. If not, for some companies, what they would do, they would actually designate one person to do the dilutions for people. In this particular situation, that might be a good idea because the overuse of a disinfectant can be just as detrimental as the underuse. So where you can get portion control, to that would also help in terms of the handling of the chemical itself, how to use it. Clearly, you have to have clear labeling on it. You have to have your MSDS sheets with it to be able to do this. And again, um, within an organization, you should have the cost assessment carried out on all your chemicals, not only to give directions in terms of how to use it, but you also need to test the effect on the staff. This is a new era that we're in, and we're using things like fogging, we're using things like atomizing and misting, and they can have a detrimental effect on the staff if not used properly. So they're all sort of things that are involved in that particular process.
All right, thank you, Tommy. We have another question for Mr. Riaz. So, Mr. Riaz, uh, Could you tell us what steps you have taken towards health and safety of staff, towards preventing contamination and in handling disinfection chemicals on a regular basis?
We are educating our teams continuously on the necessary safety measures, including social distancing, proper hygiene, and to recognize the symptoms of COVID-19 and provide. And we are providing instructions on what they have to do if they develop the symptoms. And we have implemented policies for also the worker protection and provide. And we are also providing the training to all staffs prior to the cleaning task before they go what we thought they have to do. And uh, we are educating our workers, performing cleaning and instructions, uh, and developing policies for the workers' protection, and provide training them on daily basis, because that training has also included how to use the PPE, why PPE is necessary, how to properly put it on and take off, and once they finish the job, what they have to do, and how to properly dispose it once they finish the cleaning, and the hazards of the cleaning chemicals used in the workplace. That standard has been shown already, and we are doing a constant awareness by media and also by using the hard copies posted in all our facilities. And we have engaged all the team in all the prevention and mitigation, composed of decision makers and also with the medical consultants.
Mr. John, would you like to add something to this?
For our staff, what we have done, like Mr. Tommy and Mr. Riaz said, is that we are following a strict regimen of training and retraining for the staff in the use of PPEs, proper PPEs, and and the correct equipment usage, etc. At this stage, see, we are working in a vital sector which is actually combating COVID spread. So it's not somewhere where you can just sit at home and expect it to go away. So when you're going out there and doing the job, what we can do, all the necessary prevention measures that we can do to protect ourselves while we are doing our jobs. And what we have initially what we did is that see, such a pandemic situation in UAE is a new scenario. So most of our team members and even other FM service providers in the region were not equipped to deal with it. So we did extensive research with BICS and ISSA and all other organizations that could provide us more research material on this. And we came up with certain aspects of cleaning, which we imported to our staff, such as disposing of the PPEs once used, ensuring that you are always protected by using the proper mask, gloves, etc., maintaining social distancing, you know, providing awareness to staff about the symptoms to watch out for, reporting to your line managers about any discomfort you have. There were, because some people, we have seen this a lot also, that they tend to hide things because of the general fear of the virus and its effects. So we have been encouraging the staff to be open, and that we are a supportive organization, and we would like to, even though we are working in a vital sector, we will still take care of you. We would like to, this should be the image that we project to the staff, so that they come out and tell you the problems rather than hiding it. This is one of the effective ways to combat it, from my perspective.
All right. Could you also tell us, John, what practices and methods are essentially included in deep cleaning and disinfection?
Uh, In the present scenario, we have what I can say is we have overhauled our entire deep cleaning and disinfection procedures that we were following earlier. Initially, when you're saying you're disinfecting a toilet, you're using your normal disinfectant such as the Dettol or like some normal chemical that you generally use, and you're mopping it down and you're cleaning it, wiping it off. But now with the present situation, we are concentrating more on the touch points and the areas uh, which need to be deep cleaned on a regular basis. An example is that in a building generally, a residential building, we clean the emergency staircase or the parking areas on a quarterly basis or monthly basis. But what we observed in the last 2 months during lockdown is that a lot of people prefer to do exercises on the staircases and the parking areas because common areas outside are closed and restricted with the number of people to be present at any given time. So we increase the frequency of deep cleaning in these areas to give better protection as well as ensure that the safety of our the customers. So, like I said previously, a deep cleaning exercise which involved buffing or scrubbing of a floor is not presently considered as deep cleaning. Right now, a deep cleaning exercise is more to do with the normal buffing, scrubbing of a floor, as well as disinfection of the surface after the cleaning is completed. This has been added to the schedule that I can say. That is what is the major change right now from the methodology.
That's wonderful. Mr. Riaz, can you please also share what practices and methods are you essentially implementing in deep cleaning and disinfection?
Yeah, actually, normally when we clean and disinfect the indoor areas, the closed areas, we are what we are doing is, for example, we are mostly called for the COVID-19 cases until now, and what we are doing when we are going there, we are closing all the areas, especially for example, the room if the person is sick who is tested positive, and we are actually closing off the areas and uh, open some of the outside areas, outside doors and windows where the air circulation will be easy. Then after that, once it is okay, then we start cleaning and disinfecting. And we once it is finished, for example, uh, this area especially includes the daily practices that normally we use to maintain a healthy environment. So we directly means we are recommending the clients that once we do the service, we need to follow up with the service again for the next week, and this is how we are converting the one-time service into a permanent one. And same goes with the cleaning and disinfecting for the outdoor areas, where we mostly focus that the sidewalks and the playgrounds and the high touch surfaces which are made of plastic or metal, the grab bars and the railings. And we normally we are educating the client that this has to be done, this has to be cleaned routinely.
All right, thank you. We have a guest question from Mr. Pratik Shetty. He asks, do you think cleaning tech with data-driven tools based on the Internet of Things, which gives real-time data on consumption, can be beneficial for cleaning managers, provided with the current situation? Would anybody like to address this?
Can you repeat the question for me, please? I didn't hear it correctly.
Sure. The question is, do you think cleaning tech with data-driven tools built on the Internet of Things, which gives real-time data on consumption, can be beneficial for cleaning managers, provided with the current situation?
Hmm. I can't take that one on. I can't answer that one conclusively.
I believe that having a grasp on your consumption levels is very important in the present scenario. I mean, you're looking at a pandemic when you're locking down the entire countries. So your stock and your regular usage needs to be monitored on a real time basis to know how effective you are and how effective you are going to be, and when do you want to have your reorders and delivery schedules in place. As most of you have seen, the start of this pandemic, there was a real big shortage in gloves, masks, sanitizing chemicals, hand sanitizers, etc. And with the cost and things going through the roof, so having a strategy in which you can monitor your consumption in real time will definitely help you in the long run if you want to plan ahead in the next quarter, next 6 months, end of the year kind of thing.
We also have another question. That is, what is the recommended time frame for disinfection for every building? We understand common areas are taken care of by facilities on daily basis. How about parking, pool areas, etc.?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. The question is, what is the recommended time frame for disinfection? Repeat process for every building. We understand common areas are taken care of by facilities seen on daily basis, but what about parking, pool areas, etc.?
Well, I believe that this depends on the usage of the area. Now, if you are in a sports complex, the pool areas and the outdoor courts, etc., is where you find more people and more usage. So this becomes a high priority area. But on the other hand, now I'll give you an example is that now we are in the holy month of Ramadan. Now prayer rooms and ablution areas are critical areas right now because people are using it more than before. So we need to concentrate on such areas more when it basically what I'm trying to say is that it depends on the situation and you need to adapt to the change. Now we are all facing this new situation in which normal schedules which is developed for your monthly, weekly, yearly basis are all obsolete, and you need to adapt to the change and the requirements of the site and the market condition as well as your day-to-day activities. So yes, uh, you need to answer this question. You need to identify the areas based on the occupancy of the area, and then base your cleaning schedule on that. That's what we should be doing right now.
All right. Our next question is for all the panelists. When it comes to products, what are we looking at from equipment to chemicals? Without mentioning any particular brand, what exactly are we looking at in terms of equipment and chemicals?
What I advise when we're looking at, you've got to look at a good recommended brand. It's got to have the associated accreditation and certification in terms of that particular brand when it comes to chemicals. Um, don't use anything that someone just gives you and just think it's okay. In terms of the equipment and the hardware itself, again, try to use a trusted brand. This is not the time to experiment, to be perfectly frank. From now on, at least the next 6 months, the next year, you know, don't experiment with your client, don't experiment with your staff. If you're going to do an experimentation, do that outside of the local, outside of your normal condition. But you should always look to be improving, and people will come out with something that will improve. There will be a chemical uh, whenever that happens, but it will be a chemical that will help to kill COVID-19 without the aid of any pre-cleaning. So you just need to watch out for that. You need to watch out for the tests, and it's a bit like using a bit of new software on a computer. The computer developers, they know there's going to be a margin of error in anything they do, and what they try to do when the errors come up, they try to block the holes. So in terms of what we do, we should do the same thing. But for me personally, at this moment in time, it's not a good time to be chopping and changing. Go with your trusted brands. use your trusted brands, and then go from there. And if something is developed in 6 months, a year's time, then probably decide to change over after that point.
Mr. Riaz, would you like to add something to that?
To add on this, actually, there are so many. There are various equipments and chemicals today in the market, and the people are selling it. But some of them are authorized. But I would like to suggest that whatever equipments and chemicals which is being used, let's have a look that it is being approved by EPA. And this EPA, normally the list, the disinfectants which were used for EPA is also used for the SARS virus. So if it is okay, if we can have a proper list of equipments and chemicals from EPA, that can be used. It will be more effective.
John, would you like to add your inputs on this?
No, I believe that Mr. Tommy and Mr. Riaz covered most of the, the point in detail. And this time, it's like Mr. Tommy said, it's better not to experiment with new things. Rather, we should stick to what we know and what kills it. Most of the time, the simple ways are the best. So yes, there are changes to the system. Like we have added the disinfection as a major part of our cleaning service now. Uh, and and for this new equipment such as fumigation equipment, sprayers, and the new disinfection chemicals that are coming up in the market are also being utilized. But stick to a trusted and an approved brand from your government, as well as there are organizations like PICS and ISA, which is doing a very good job of spreading awareness about new chemicals and the kind of competition they should have to fight this virus. So yes, we stick to the best, the trusted brands rather than experiment. That's what my take on this.
All right, moving on to the next question. This one is again open to all the panelists. Several alternate cleaning methods have been explored and are being used in the market. For instance, nanotechnology or self-cleaning, steam cleaning, or using UVC light. How feasible are these in large spaces like commercial and residential buildings?
Can I come in there? I think that there are several different methods that have come to light recently. I must admit I don't know all of them. I've not experienced all of them. I experienced UV cleaning some years ago in a hospital environment, and in that kind of environment, what we need to do is you need to test your environment. Really, to be honest with you, you can't use UV cleaning in a high traffic area, so you couldn't really use it in an accommodation, etc., because people are always moving around. You've got to be able to isolate the area. So any form of mechanization, like steam cleaning, like ultraviolet cleaning, even misting, even fogging, you have to do it on its own merit in terms of what's the location. Are you able to lock that location down and get sole access to that location? How long could you get access to that location for? So there's various things that need to be looked at. I don't have personally a particular preference as to one over the other because I've not used all of them, so I can't really say. And they all have their place in the marketplace. I mean, I see the question there, talks about steam cleaning. Well, steam cleaning is really, you could do steam cleaning, but on a major scale, and in terms of what we're doing, it may not be appropriate to do steam cleaning because you're not going to get to some of the critical areas that you need to get to. Yes, you can get to touch points, you can get to door handles, you can get to anything of that, you can get to toilets and washrooms with a steam clean, that's fine. But again, if you're using UV, then that would also work. But again, I think it's really about horses for courses. It really does matter the location, the traffic in that location. Can you close that location down to be able to do an effective clean? And at this moment in time, that may work because where the buildings are unoccupied, that's okay. But the problem that we're going to have is what's going to happen once the buildings start to be occupied again. once people start touching, once people start communicating with each other, that's going to be where, that's going to test us out even more than what we've got now, to be perfectly frank.
Mr. John, would you like to add something to that?
No, I think Mr. Tommy covered the aspect in detail very clearly. Uh, the new technologies which we have mentioned, like steam cleaning, UV, and nanotechnology, are good and will be effective in certain spaces, like Mr. Tom pointed out. But in the present scenario, I'll just try to emphasize that the whole world is right now trying to implement inspection and cleaning on a larger scale. So won't be easy trying to get this technology and then training the staff and then utilizing it in an effective manner in the short time span we have to combat this virus. In the long run, for sure, I'm sure that there is going to be major changes in the way we do cleaning and disinfection of most areas. And in time, this technology will expand and it will be available to everyone, even the specialist equipment. But in the present scenario, I think it's best to stick to our old tried and tested methods, which are actually effective right now.
Through that. Mr. Riaz, would you like to add something to the pointers which Mr. Tommy and Mr. John have shared?
Yeah, just to add a quick one, I think most of the questions are answered by Mr. Tom and Jean. The thing is, I would like to tell that cleaning, basically, there is a difference between manual cleaning and the cleaning done by equipment. For example, we are doing a facade cleaning. For example, we say if you are using an equipment and if you are using uh, an equipment and a man-made cleaning, that is something different. So now, if you are asking about the steam cleaning or the ultraviolet, I don't think it will be feasible for the large spaces like commercial and residential spaces. But the thing is, how can a steam cleaning and ultraviolet can cover the other aspects like doorknobs, these, that, blah, blah, the small one, which has to be focused very importantly in this current scenario.
All right. We also have another question from Mr. Arjun. Along the same lines, he says, how can we reframe an SOP with cleaning and disinfection for every different type of surface for every time? Mr. Riaz, can you please answer that?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
The question is from Mr. Arjun. He says that he would like to know how we can reframe the SOP with cleaning and disinfection of every surface every time.
Hello.
I believe Mr. Arjun, sorry, Riyaz, please continue.
Mr. Riaz, can you hear me?
Sorry, I can't hear you properly.
The question is, Mr. Arjun would like to know how we can reframe the SOP with cleaning and disinfection for every surface and every time.
Hello.
Can I'll take that on while Mr. Riaz is hopefully
Yes.
getting sorted. I think that you can't guarantee anything. As I said, once human intervention is there, you cannot guarantee that everything's going to get done. However, if you have a specific SOP for a location for surfaces, that's fine. It's the way that it's written, and I think the thing is that for quite a few of us in our industry, especially people that have been elevated into roles that they're not familiar with, it's going to be a problem because they don't know the pitfalls in doing certain things. They will jump on the bandwagon and look at steam cleaning when steam cleaning is not appropriate, or they may use a completely different method that's not appropriate for a particular surface. So, what we're looking at, and as I said, and I think that I hope my colleagues would agree with me. There's no guarantees in what we do in terms of the cleaning of all the surfaces. There's no guarantee at all. And the one thing that we had to remember, and the mantra that I've had for years, a surface is only cleaned until someone touches it. So, you could put all the effort you want into world, but as soon as, the building's occupied and someone starts to touch it, then that becomes a problem. So putting in the correct procedures for doing things, getting collaboration from your clients to ensure that your clients understand what it is you're trying to achieve and what he or she wants to achieve, they're key to it. If you've got a client that is totally dominant and insists that you use a particular procedure or particular method that is not going to suit a surface, then you need to highlight that. And if they insist on going with it, then you have to make that judgment call whether you do it or not. Because to do something in the wrong way, well, we know what's going to happen. We know the problems that are lied, and we know where we stand in the food chain when it comes to us as an industry. So I think that the time has come for us as organisations, us as people working in the clean industry, is to educate our clients. Educate them on what needs to be done, not just for financial stakes. We're actually talking about now for people's lives in terms of this particular virus and going forward. And sure as eggs is eggs. When we had SARS, we thought that our life was going to be okay. Now we've got COVID-19. In the next 5, 10, 15 years, something else might come up. So, we've always got to be on the ball in terms of what we do. And if a client, especially, and I may be going slightly off piece, but if a client insists that something is now clean once a week rather than every day, then you have to make a judgment call. Because at the end of the day, the client would always come back to you and say, well, that's your fault because you've not done it properly. Well, we all know that you cannot do a job once a week as well as if you're doing it 5 days a week. We all know that. So there's got to be an education process in terms of our clients, the procurers, what they do. And it's not just about the money, it's about the methods, it's about what we use, it's about the quality of what we use. Cheap isn't always good. It's come back to bite us now in several different ways. It's come back to bite us because they've been buying cheap for years. Clients have been pulling back in terms of the cleaning regime. Oh, only do that once a week now. Don't do that 5 days a week because I can't afford it or I don't want to pay for it. So the landscape has changed now. So we need to be looking at it in a completely different way.
All right, Mr. John, you wanted to add something to that, I think, at the beginning of Tommy's response.
No, I think Mr. Tommy covered it beautifully. I believe that Mr. Arun has got the gist of the matter now. Yes, I don't. He has covered all points as related to this
All
question.
right,
I believe.
Mr. Riaz, can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So, would you like to add something to this?
It's okay. I think Mr. Tommy has already answered all the questions.
All right. We have another very interesting question from Arjun. He asks, how effective is the usage of artificial intelligence, like the usage of drones in workplace robotics cleaning machines? And how will it help to avoid infections in our staff?
Actually, in UAE, they already started testing certain drone technology which can remotely measure temperature for a large number of people or a building which is having suspected cases of infection in large numbers, rather than somebody going there and taking physical swab, etc. Uh, uh, Going forward, I believe this will be very effective in managing and identifying areas, what you can call red alert areas in densely populated locations, because it minimizes human contact, as well as we are able to cover a large area in a short span of time. So this technology is going to be very effective and highly, widely utilized going forward, especially in combating such pandemic situations.
All right. Moving on to our next question, which is for you, Tommy. Uh, we spoke about the different cleaning methods like nanotechnology, steam cleaning, and using ultraviolet C light. Tell us about the feasibility and health and safety aspect in training personnel to use these devices.
Um, uh, well, I mean, health and safety is obviously forefront of what we should be doing, whether it be for the safety of our staff and the safety of our clients and users. The key thing to it, I go back to, is really about training. Um, it's about understanding. You know, I think one of the things that we lose within our industry when we train staff is we don't test their knowledge. We don't find out if they actually understand what we're saying, especially if we've got staff that don't speak the first language of the country that they're working in. So I can only give you examples. Say for instance, here in the UK, um, I recently ran a course the other day, and I gave the top participants a knowledge course before they started to see exactly where their knowledge is in terms of what they know about the particular subject. And I gave them a test at the end of it with the same questions in it, plus more. And it was just surprising how, just looking at the way that someone's asked the question, how little they understood what was there in terms of written English. So, given that their written English wasn't that good, I had to assume that their spoken English isn't that good. So, when we train our staff, it's crucial that we understand that they actually understand what it is they've got to do. You know, do we actually give them, if we're showing them how to fill a glass with water, do we get them to demonstrate to us that they actually know? These are the things that we need to be doing at this moment in time, especially leading up to this particular the lockdown that we've got here. It was very difficult to assess that because really at the time it was grab anybody that was available because of client perspective. But going forward, for me personally, it's always been important to train and retrain. The health and safety side of it will come into that in your training. If you train somebody properly in the right manner, you follow manufacturer's instructions, whether it be chemicals or whether it be hardware or machinery, then your battle is over. If you don't follow them instructions, then things will be compromised, the staff will be compromised, your clients will be compromised, and you're going to have a problem. So I know that it's part of my role and my job, and I've been doing it for a long time. But for me, the importance of any cleaning team is the training and retraining of the staff and the evaluation of the staff.
All right, we have another question from the audience. It's from Mr. Badar. He asks, what is the best cleaning and disinfection method when I have an infected person with COVID-19? Mr. Riaz, can you answer that?
Could you kindly repeat the question?
Sure. The question is, what is the best cleaning and disinfectant method when there is a confirmed case of COVID-19 in the building?
Okay. Normally, we have been called several times for the COVID-19 positive cases. What we are doing is we are unlocking the areas, closing all the areas where the person is sick, and then vacant the complete area, and start with a deep cleaning, especially, and then sanitize the complete area by wiping the knobs, the doors, the faucet, that the person who was tested positive, what he was using, including the toilets, the accessories, each and everything has to be wiped up, has to be cleaned properly, and has to be sanitized. Then we are also using the disinfection, then the spraying, and once upon completion, what we are educating the client, that this has to be done on a daily basis, on a frequent intervals, and if you want to do it twice a day, you have to do it. Once the person has to reuse the area again, it has to be done frequently. This is what we are doing. It's a
We have
continuous
added
routine cleaning and disinfection, you can say.
continuity to that. We have another question in continuity to that from Adrian, who asks, who are you sending in to do this and what is the risk to them?
Sorry. Hello.
Uh,
Yeah.
we have another question in continuity to your answer, Mr. Sinadi. The question is from Adrian, who asks, when there is a confirmed case of COVID 19 in a building, who are you sending in to do the disinfection and what is the risk to them?
Actually, we have, we have a team, which is the complete team, we can say, where we have educated them in all terms, that what are the precautionary and the measures has to be taken when they go into the positive cases, and how to prevent the contamination, how they have to implement a personal hygiene, what PP has to be wear. Uh, we have a complete, constant awareness and educated all our staff. This staff we are using for the special cases, like where the people have been tested positive. And before going, we have also implemented the process of checking the symptoms when they enter the facility also. And once they come, what they have to do, what are the measures that has to be taken when they come out, the dispose, the PPE, and all these things. Everything is being educated properly, and we have a special staff we are using for this COVID-19 cases.
All right. We have another question from Deepak. He asks, every pest control company is marketing as a disinfection company with a sprayer. Do you think it's dangerous? Do you think it's more dangerous than being helpful?
I don't think only pest control companies. All the companies nowadays, they have changed their uh, logo to the cleaning companies, cleaning and sanitization and pest control companies. With so many establishments, small establishment companies are coming, but the people have to stick on with the companies uh, whom they know very well, and what type of equipments and what type of chemicals and what type of materials they are using uh, to deal with the cases of this COVID-19. That is very important.
Of course. So moving on to our next question. This question is again for all the panelists. What about indoor air quality? In a recent podcast with an environmental consultant, he learned that disinfected air can last only for so long. So, what steps should be taken or are being taken to ensure that the virus doesn't spread within the AC system?
Well, I'll come in. I personally can't answer that one. I think that's an M&E question, really. It's not really a question as a cleaning professional that I can answer. To be perfectly frank, I think that if I just sort of touch on one point, it might be a bit of a touchy point for some people. But I think that as cleaners, cleaning operatives, cleaning companies, I think that at the moment, I think there's a lot of emphasis being put on what we do or what we don't do, and there's a few grey areas in terms of what's cleaning and what's not cleaning. In terms of the air quality, that would be down to the building owner in terms of the air quality and what's done. All we can do as an organisation is to clean any air grids. We can clean any air con that's in the ceiling, but the actual deep cleaning of the actual air quality system that I would suspect, and I would like someone to tell me if I'm wrong, and I'm quite happy to accept, but that will come down to M&E really. That's their baby in terms of doing that, and the filtration systems, the airflow. That's really their baby, not this. It's not something that I'm familiar that we do as cleaning organisations.
Okay, I would like to add, Ania, on this. Uh, if the virus is available in a specified place, for example, if a virus is available in a specified place, it will obviously go into the return ducts, and it will be returned back through the supply ducts into the same room. Okay. Therefore, the AC ducts has to be cleaned, decontaminated, and sanitized properly. Now, as per the EPA and what we have noticed, the virus takes place in a very cold temperature, and this can be the main reason. So normally it is been suggested, and it has to be done. All the AC ducts has to be cleaned, decontaminated, and sanitized quarterly, at least quarterly, for all the sectors at this time, especially.
John, would you like to add something to that?
We are disinfecting buildings where there are suspected cases of the virus and confirmed cases also. So my understanding is that since we are following a three-phase disinfection scheme, let's say wiping a surface, then spraying all the corners and where unaccessible areas, as well as fumigation system also. So when you're using fumigation system, this generally goes into your air ducts and your air conditioning blowers, motors, etc., which will recirculate and the disinfection in your air conditioning system also to a certain extent. When you're looking at the the bigger picture, it's always better to disinfect the entire system. But when you're considering the practicalities of doing that for an HVAC system for a building or a tower or a hospital or a hotel, etc., on a regular basis, we will need to study further into this before we can comment on something like this.
Definitely. We have a comment from Mr. Michael Rollins. He says, as well as improving surface decontamination methods and increasing frequency, hand hygiene compliance is essential, and training in hand hygiene techniques to avoid recontamination and cross contamination. Clean surfaces and clean hands is an equal and opposite equation. We completely agree with you, Mr. Rollins. Hand hygiene is of utmost importance. With that, we will move on to our next question, which is for you, Mr. Sanagi. What have been your biggest challenges in the time of COVID?
The biggest challenge, what we are facing currently, that the closure, the problem is we are not able to operate fully due to the curfews. The challenges, what we are means in the term of cleaning. Some of the people, what I would like to say is people are getting back, especially the teams for the cleaning teams. They are getting back to do this type of services. One challenge is this, and other challenge is this the businesses are closed now, and hopefully once it is open, uh, uh, we are also facing a challenge of the short of materials, chemicals, uh, and so this is the thing. This is the biggest challenge what we are currently facing right now, that we can't operate fully.
Of course, there are restrictions. Mr. John, what challenges are you facing in times of COVID?
Okay, Samya, actually, as a FM service provider, in this scenario, if you look at it in a broader sense, there are challenges as well as there are opportunities for us. Now, as part of the opportunity, you can say that disinfection and deep cleaning business has gone up through the roof, frankly saying. And like Mr. Riaz pointed out, there is a huge drop in the normal business around in the economy due to the present condition. But more than this, our main challenge is the long-term planning. cleaning is a labor-intensive industry. So we have a huge number of staff who are dependent on having long-term contracts for their, job security and regular salary. Now, with the present market as it is and the fluctuations of change, with tried and tested methodologies being thrown out and the new methodologies being adopted, there is a big uncertainty with regards to the cleaning industry as a whole, I think. So this is a major challenge for us to plan what's going to happen in the next 2 months, next 6 months, 1 year, 2 year. That's the major issue that we are facing right now.
But to add on this, sorry, Samia, to add on this, some of our clients are also asking for the disinfection tunnels, which is currently not, I think it's not available here in Saudi market. The disinfection, and we have also heard that the Makkah and Medina are going to install the medical flooring, which can be tested once the person steps on it. So, based on all these aspects, the forthcoming, we don't know what is going to happen in next 6 months. Hopefully, I think this cleaning and disinfection and sanitization will be the biggest challenge in the era, you can say. If we go forward, and this is the biggest thing what we have to do now.
All right, before we move on to our next question, I would like to announce to the audience that we'll be closing this session soon. So if you have any further questions for our panelists, please type them now into the question box so that we can bring them up during the webinar. So moving on to our next question now. What are the deep cleaning steps to undertake once the current pandemic is over? This question is open to all the panelists. I'll start with you, Tommy.
Okay. Well, I'm advising at the moment that there's a review of specifications in terms of the requirements, and this overlaps slightly to the last question. I think that there's going to be negotiations or renegotiations in terms of contract value and what's expected from the client and what's expected from the contractor. Here in the UK at the moment, I know of one client, and what's been perfectly obvious in this last month or so is that a lot more people can actually work from home just as effectively as they do in the office. So some clients are actually now looking at repatriating staff so that they can work from home on a more regular basis. And clearly that has a knock-on effect on the any business, because if you've got less footfall going into the business, then the client's going to say, well, we've only got 100 people now instead of 300 people. You need to cut back, and then you need to, tailor your costs accordingly. So there's lots of things in terms of what's going to be expected. We need to redefine on a daily basis what deep cleaning is going to mean and how it's going to work within the industry. And we're going to have to redefine the methods that we use in order that we don't have a repetition of what we've got just now. As I said before, COVID-19 is the new SARS. And when we had SARS, we thought that SARS was bad enough. Now we've got something that's worse. And maybe in the next few years, we might have something even worse. So we can only do what we can do for the present moment. We can't actually legislate for something that hasn't actually arrived yet. So there's lots of things that we need to look out for, but there will be some changes in the way that we deliver our cleaning, our client expectations, what third parties expect, i.e. general public. So it's hard for me to predict, really, to be perfectly frank, and say conclusively where we're going with this.
Mr. John, would you like to add on?
I would like to answer this as a facility, management professional more on a contractor side. So I believe that deep cleaning is going to be synonymous with disinfectant and sanitization by the time this pandemic is over. You know, there will be major changes to all SOPs for deep cleaning. Like Mr. Tommy said, the client expectations is going to be totally different uh, from what it is presently, and most of the contracts will be redefined and new SOPs, new SLAs, KPIs, schedules will be drawn up, and disinfection and sanitizing is going to be a major part of all activities, I believe.
All right. Mr. Riaz, would you like to add something to this? What are the deep cleaning
Yeah,
steps?
yeah. Actually, once this pandemic is over, I think the people who come back, especially in the corporate sectors and the residential, of obviously including the residentials, the people have to educate themselves and they have to understand the deep cleaning and what they have to do on their own. That is very important. For example, a person is going to a mosque, he has to understand what he has to do and what he has to take with him. This is the more important thing. And going with the corporate sector, I think as Mr. He told that the contracts will be redefined and there will be new KPIs and SLAs, and we have to deal with the new clauses of cleaning. And I would like to say that once this is over, the people have to go for for a cleaning, not once a week. That has to be daily, and they have to pay the special attention to the areas of special like toilets and bathrooms, and the especially the touch points in the offices, the pads, the phones, and the handles, the doors, and what they have to rethink, what they have to recheck what they are using, what type of antibacterial spray they are using, and what soaps they are using, and what are the allergic reactions once they use. That has to be educated properly. Swimming pools, they have to get, for example, they have swimming pools that has to be get maintained and cleaned on a daily basis. Nowadays the people are cleaning their AC ducts once in a year, twice in a year, but now they have to go it quarterly. They have to decontaminate and sanitize it quarterly. And especially if we go for the water tanks cleaning and disinfections, I don't remember the people, the clients have done it yearly or twice in 2 years' time. That has to be done every 6 months. This all aspects has to be taken care properly once this pandemic is over.
Definitely. Thank you, Mr. Riaz, Mr. Dean, and Mr. Tommy. It looks like we have a couple of questions from our listeners, from Ms. Waleha. We'll take this question and then we'll wrap this session up. The question is, considering the risks perceived from the experience during the pandemic, do you think that while drawing up contracts post pandemic, there would be increased focus on more frequent deep cleaning and disinfection than it was before at the onset of the pandemic, particularly with regard to residential and commercial facilities?
I take for definite that will happen. That will happen without a doubt. That will happen. I don't think personally there's going to be a discrimination in terms of what locations. I think it's going to happen in every location, whether it be a gymnasium, whether it be a nightclub, whether it be a church, whether it be a mosque. There's going to be a redefining in terms of our interaction with surfaces, other people, what the cleaning operative does, what he or she doesn't do, whether they've been trained correctly, whether we're using the right equipment. So, from whenever this started, and from in our case, whenever we started the lockdown, the whole landscape in terms of cleaning facilities is changed. It just changed overnight. And the changes we're seeing, yes, we're seeing certain changes now, but the big changes will be when we come out of this particular period and when it's not classed as a pandemic anymore, but it will always be lingering in the background. There will always be doubts in people's minds. there would always be, can I touch that surface, or I don't want to touch that surface, I've seen X touch that surface. There's a lot of things that need to be done. So, forward thinking is fine. But we don't actually know we don't actually know in certain cases how it's going to pan out, because a lot of it isn't depend on our clients. As you know, there's not a lot of money around because businesses have been closed. There's no turnover, so that has to be redefined. Our relationship in terms of what we get paid for and what we expect them to do at a later date. So there's a lot of things that we need to consider.
Definitely. It looks like we've covered all of our questions. So thank you, Mr. Riaz, Mr. John, and Mr. Tommy, and thank you for all our listeners. Appreciate you being here, and we hope this brief session, sponsored by Visa Hygiene, has helped you gain perspective on how to deep clean commercial and residential buildings to combat coronavirus. Thank you again for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Tommy, Mr. Jin. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Take care.
Same to you.
Thank you guys for this wonderful time, and let's take care in this critical
Pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye bye. All the best.
Super.
All the best. Bye bye.
Bye.